Hey there, beings, people, other digital things. You are watching Healthy Mind, and I am Dear Danny, your self-awareness data journalist, where I focus on my self-awareness journey, and I'm inviting you all to think a little bit deeper with me, to be inspired, to talk about how thoughts can support you, and to create innovative journaling assignments from our experiences. So as always, I am taking something from social media, from the media, from online. These are unpopular opinions, just opinions and thoughts. And we're going to just explore a little bit with this thought a little bit more intentionally instead of just scrolling and consuming. So today's thought comes from be mindful that I'm finding these videos on other people's pages, and this is intentionally. It's from a page called Harley Initiated, because this is where I found the content. So Harley Initiated is a podcast. It's a safe space for deep connection. I'll put that on the screen. And this journaling assignment, they had someone on the podcast, and that someone on the podcast is the author of today's message. So let's go ahead and listen to Dr. Thema. And I'm saying that incorrectly, forgive me. Let's go ahead and look up the message.
Another tool we can sometimes use for avoidance is our religion. When people spiritualize the issue instead of naming it. In testimony service, people would tell the story of something they've been through and God helped them to get through it. And then we got to a place where we felt people couldn't handle our truth, so everybody is speaking in metaphor, right? Nobody's saying STD, nobody's saying abortion. We just like, oh, I was in warfare. Right? Everything is right. Everything is a code, right? Yeah. If you're running, it's just Jesus, 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 Jesus. Well, I can't say what happened, then I'm not set free, right? So when I'm free, then I can shatter shame, I can shatter silence, I can shatter embarrassment, I can shatter humiliation, because I know I am more than what I've been through, more than what I have done, but it is a part of my story.
There's a framework that we're following. It's the our thought, their thought, or remix framework, but with a little bit more questions, where we're first going to identify what is this author saying. When we identify what the author is saying, the author of this message, we are taking away how we feel about it. We just created a blanket understanding of what we think the author is saying. This is going to really help us identify what we are extracting from the message. So go ahead, write down on a piece of paper, or write down in your mind, or just have it twinkle in the air somewhere what you think the author is saying. I'll share what I think the author is saying is this. She's saying that we mask our stories and our spiritual journeys, or spiritual vocabulary. So the spiritual vocabulary is, I could say I used to drink every night, every day, and I was an addict. But instead I would say, man, I was really going through a hard time, and it was warfare, and God brought me through it. That's what I believe the author is saying. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to see what other people are saying in the comments. And I'm going to assume, because we got to go to the author, with the poster of the content, Harley Initiated, we're thinking that most of their followers are going to be about this life. So we might see a lot of this, but let's see what we found in the comments. I'm just going to go through some random comments and post them on the screen. So here's the first comment. Talking to family and friends about toxic relationships, and their answer is, God is testing you. He wouldn't put you in this position if you weren't strong enough to deal with it. Okay, that's one message. I'm not really following it too much. Here's another one. But do you have to share your testimony with everyone? I share my testimonies with those I feel comfortable with and trust. It's not for the entire church to know. So the person I share my testimonies has seen and heard my accountability. Okay, a little spicy. Here's the next one. People tend to use religion as a coat to not deal with their issues. All their issues is supposedly will be solved by leaving it in God's hand, while continuously every day going out and being toxic. I'm not following that one too much either. Here's another one. I'm 4 months postpartum. My baby was born 3 months premature. Spent 3 months in the NCU or the NICU. My delivery experience was traumatic for me. I felt like people were over spiritualizing how I should respond. I didn't even feel safe to share about my fearless experiences with my therapist, so I stopped seeing her. Dr. Thema's book, Homecoming, and other interviews, podcasts, I heard her speak on helped me to recognize when my feelings were being silenced, dismissed by good intentional people trying to over spiritualize human experiences. She is who the church needs to hear more from. Okay, I thought. Another one says, I used to be a part of a church that would focus on my wrongdoings and not my healing. They would harp on my sin in the name of accountability, but there was never a shoulder to cry or encouragement to receive proper help. That's why I am cryptic with my testimonies when I'm in a group of people I don't know well. And I'll read two more before we get into it. This one says, thanks. But unfortunately, church people are fake and mean, and they say they're praying for you, but half the time they're not. They just nosy and judgmental. They celebrate you when you're chained, but when you rise out of it, they irritate at times. I've seen it over and over again, so that's why people speak in code until the hearts of men become more like... I don't even know how to say this, but this is a name that's used for Jesus. I don't know it, so I'm not going to pretend that I know how to pronounce it. There will be a whole lot of coding and technology. Help us, Lord, with a T. All right, and then the last one. This is so good, but it underpins the abuse and neglect that happens in church, a place you would expect to be seen the most. Okay. So here's the next part of the framework. We identified what the message is in. We are looking at different perspectives in the comments. Now here's our opportunity to learn. Do we agree with the thought, which is our thought? Are we completely against the thought, which is their thought? Or if there's some remix, how do we respond, whether it be with questions or with our own thought? Now, I'm most of the time going to have my own thought, and that's what's called the Dear Danny session. Dear Danny. So this is when I'm talking to myself, because I need to talk to myself, because when you're on the internet and you say a thought and people don't agree with it, or you say the wrong thing, it's almost like you're doing all these things. But Dear Danny, and you can create your own dear. Maybe it's Dear Jack, or Dear Josanna, or Dear Emily, or Dear Tiana. This is the opportunity for you to speak to yourself about whatever the thought is. I'm inspired by the thought. It challenges me in a way, because I'm thinking, am I cryptic with my messaging? For instance, I've been on this YouTube journey for a while, and I've learned that I don't talk as much as I thought I would about being in a cult. I used to be in a cult, and I define it as a cult. Now, I'll share why I'm so cryptic about it, because first, when I say it so freely, I'm just like, I'm living my life. Yeah, I used to be in a cult, but like, I still live my life, and look at me now. I'm great. I'm D&D. I'm not scorned. But people will look at you and like, wow, you were in a cult, or they're like, their eyes open, and I think it's hilarious. I think it's so funny. But sometimes I want to talk about it. Sometimes I don't want to talk about it. But on this YouTube page, Healthy Mind was created because I am not in a cult anymore. And I left this cult because I was able to think for myself, and I was able to look at certain things that were pulled out and say, that doesn't make sense. In this journey of leaving a cult, I started to experience other things in the spiritual world and religious world that questioned me. I even thought about churches in the way some of these comments have shared, where it's like, those people. But the more I was on this journey, the more I was more expressive about this experience, it then became a relationship with me and God, where I'm very honest about all the questions that I have. And now when I look at people and their experiences, I'm not connecting these particular mean people or judgmental people in church or weird people in church to the relationship I have with God, or even the experience I might have at an event that's called church. But I'm still probably cryptic about the entire journey, because there's so many different pieces that if you say one line to one person, it's not going to really cover everything. If it's not covering everything, then a lot of people can distort what it means when I say, I was in a cult. So I can say that freely. I was in a cult. I was in a cult. I was a subject of a cult, right? But maybe depending on my delivery, maybe depending on things that I don't mention, people are going to have their own imagination. This is so important, because I have had my own imagination about what it means to be in a cult, and which is why I never really thought I was in a cult. When I think about cults, I used to think about people in a basement being raped and abused, amongst other things. I watched some documentaries talking about cults, and there's so many different aspects of a cult. I honestly believe that a lot of all of us are in some type of cult, even if we don't see it as a cult. And I'll talk about that in another video. But that's just my little Dear Danny. I'm talking to myself about how I'm responding to the video. Now, my question to you is there anything that inspired you in this video, something that you learned? Are you completely against this thought? If so, I want to know why and what can you use from this video to help support whatever you believe is true. So here's an example. You're listening to the video and you're like, that is not true. When I go up to tell my testimony is about glorifying God, I don't need to have details. And so you can use this information that you got from this thought in a seamless and the less, let me see, what's that word I want to use? In a way that's not catty. Just receive the thought, use it for whatever it is that you stand for. So on my journey, my spiritual journey, as I'm going through all these questions, speaking to people, in the beginning, I would have some opposition. It would be more about proving my point. Now I'm just in the space of learning. The more I learn, I would understand, why do I believe in God? Why do I choose the methods I choose? And so when I'm in the place of just learning and using these conversations to leverage my belief, then it feels a lot more beneficial than trying to argue with people about why my belief is better than theirs. So that's the point there. Now, to close out today's session, I hope that you guys are following me. I feel like I was just over here like, nope. And if that's the case, I'm so glad that you're still here. You are phenomenal. But what I want us to do at the end of this is an assignment. A general assignment. In this video, the woman talks about being cryptic with our story. What is your story? Do you have a testimony? Even if you don't consider yourself a Christian or align yourself with a faith that mentions testimonies, testimonies are just your story. Do you have a story in your life that require you to shift from one thought to another, or to shift from one behavior to the other? If so, use 2 minutes on the clock and write out that story. Now, before I close out, if you do have a story and you are willing to share and be a guest on my podcast so that we can discuss your shift, put in the comments or send me an email at hello@peaceequations.com so that we can connect and have a conversation. Until next time, hold on to you as much as you can. Hold on to your health, your well-being, and your mind. Be mindful. Bye.